They're messing with us. We are once again live for the conference championship edition of the Letter Winners podcast. I am Eric Froton with NBC Sports Edge with my partner, as always, the purveyor of the CFF site, Mike Bainbridge, there in Wakanda, Illinois. I am in Kauai right now, so the reason why we're doing this on Friday is I have to fly out in the AM, unfortunately, so we won't be able to do the Saturday show, but such is life.
How long
have you been get it out.
How long you been?
It'll be 12 days total. I come back. I actually go back to Southern California. I was in, as you know, Cincinnati the past 13 months, but we're back in our place. We've been Airbnb-ing in SoCal in Carlsbad, lovely Carlsbad, California, in San Diego County. So we'll be moving back. I'm going right back to SoCal, and I'll be there for a long time. Well, actually, I'll be there for 2 weeks, and actually I come back here again with my family, with the wife's family for this one, and we'll be with my family for the next one. So I'm making sure to get as much Hawaii time as I can this holiday season.
12 days and not a hint of a tan on you.
No, nothing. Well, I've been working. It's been a workcation for the most part, so it's been a little bit of both. But, I have to try to do my best here. I'm in the pool every day. It's just I make sure to get myself all mocked up because otherwise the freckles come out. The Irish part of me.
Swedish background, didn't you say? Something like that?
I'm predominantly Swedish, but I also have some Irish and English in me. So that's when I get the sun, that's when it comes out. But, as we digress here, we are back here for another week. We went 5-3 last week. We are currently 78-43 on the season through 14 weeks. Not bad. We're going to still try to obviously have a nice big finish to the regular season in the conference championships. So without any further ado, we will get going on the late injury news. Rocky Lombardi, my man, the blonde bomber himself, Northern Illinois, listed as probable, missed last week. But obviously with the conference championship ready to go for this week, he will be ready to go. I sincerely think he will be playing. Cole Tucker, Northern Illinois as well, also listed as probable. And that's a big game that we will be talking about, obviously, for this podcast because, hey, it's Kent State, Northern Illinois. You want to find points. That's where you go to get them. And lastly, Gerry Bohanon, Baylor, hamstring injury, listed as questionable. Ooh, that's certainly going to put a crimp into Baylor's chances of beating a stout Oklahoma State defense, one of the top 3 defenses, I think, in my opinion, in the land. Possibly think number 2 behind Georgia for my money. We could get into Iowa, obviously, and talk about that. But I've been really impressed with Oklahoma State's done. In fact, against Oklahoma, they basically gave away 16 points. On the offensive side, thanks to your boy Spencer Sanders. So, Baylor's going to have to play a real clean football game if they intend to win this. Michael, your thoughts on those news bites?
Yeah, nothing really on Gerry Bohanon. I haven't seen an update to this point. Obviously, it has an impact on the game, the outlook of the game, which I believe you will hit on later in this. We're not obviously playing him regardless if he starts or not in any of our DFS lineups for this week against that stout Oklahoma State defense, as you alluded to. With regards to Northern Illinois, I watched the press conference with head coach Thomas Hammock, and he seemed to indicate everybody that's listed on the depth chart should be good to go, which means Rocky Lombardi and Cole Tucker, I believe, should start. I can't remember now to this point watching that last game against Western Michigan, but I remember both, I believe, on the sidelines. So I don't think there's a serious injury there. They already had the Mack title game appearance wrapped up at that point, so really nothing to play for in that game. So I expect both to play. As you alluded to, again, a lot of points. Kent State made a defensive coordinator change, I believe, after the last meeting between these two teams. Hasn't really had a major impact. They allowed 40-plus points to 2 of their last 3 opponents. So I expect both Lombardi and Cole Tucker to be in the lineup, and points aplenty that in that MAC championship.
Yes, can't wait for that. Should be quite an entertaining affair, as it always is with Maction. It's been a real success this year. A lot of fun games from Maction. So, love to see those Tuesday, Wednesday games, and the branding. Got to give it to them. It's the Sun Belt to jump on some of that. So, but we'll see. That being said, San Diego State, Lucas Johnson started the last game, listed as questionable for this one, was overtaken by Jordan Brookshire, senior, who ended up doing pretty well, rallying them back against Boise State, and he will get the start. From what Brady Hoke had said earlier in the week, he had sort of indicated that he was very, specious when it came to his Lucas Johnson discussion, and indicated that it'll be a Brookshire, at least getting the first snaps. And then George Pickens. Welcome back, George Pickens. All right, he's been practicing, even got some snaps last game, listed as probable. I have no reason to think if he was playing a little bit last game against the lowly Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, then I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be in against Alabama in the biggest game of the year for them. Georgia's had a wonderful schedule. I mean, you just everything aligned for him. It's opened the door, rolled out the red carpet. Here you go to the SEC East. And in that same game, Brian Robinson, considered pretty much a straight questionable call from Alabama. There's been a lot of conjecture regarding his status. If he can't go, man, Jace McClellan hurt, Roydell Williams hurt. We saw Trey Sanders come in and just provide a middling sort of a performance against Auburn. Really wasn't very inspiring by any metric. He's had real injury issues with the past couple of years, has fallen behind the two younger running backs in the pecking order. But hey, attrition means Trey Sanders, here he is. Even Kamara Wheaton's hurt. So it's last man standing kind of a situation in the Alabama backfield.
Yeah, that one's kind of interesting. I was trying to construct some DFS lineups today. Trey Sanders is priced up to 6,100. So I'm not
6,100. You're not even getting value out of him.
No,
in a short slate.
So I wanted to mention that though, because the value. Now I might have passed out during the second half of the Alabama Auburn game because I was on a high after the Michigan victory. So I didn't actually see it happen, but I was reading and listening. I believe Christian Leary, the talented 4-star wide receiver prospect, got some reps in the backfield there. So he's only 3,200. If Brian Robinson is out, we're obviously not playing Trey Sanders. We haven't been too impressed with Trey Sanders in his career. So maybe they look to get Christian Leary involved in the offense there. And at 3,200 could be a decent value play. With regards to George Pickens, I've seen some reports lately that they're really ramping up his practice reps. And I believe he's running with the ones right now if he hadn't been previously. So he's min priced on DraftKings this week. I mean, they've been ramping up his practice time, his playing time for this matchup, right? For
he's over a year off of the ACL. You know, that's the standard return time.
These are the games that matter for Georgia. You figure they're saving him for these types of games. So at 3,000, he's probably their best wide receiver. I think it's worth a dart throw. And then real quick on Lucas Johnson, don't yell at me here, but I did get a prize picks under on Lucas Johnson before they yanked that off the board with Jordan Brookshire starting. I know. I apologize. Some of these you just don't. You scroll past them. It just doesn't click in your head, and then you're just like, oh man, Jordan Brookshire is starting. Let me get this under right here. I mean, I don't know.
And then it's gone. Poof. There they go. Those props.
I don't know if Lucas Johnson's not getting the start. I don't know if he's going to play or not, but again, worth a dart.
It's a free roll. It's a free roll. And we've really been trying to attack those quarterbacks that we know either are not going to start, may get a rep in terms of those unders. And, it's worked out with Max Johnson, worked out with Keaton Slovis. But, in this case, it's a total dice roll. But again, it's free. Free.
We've never lost those. We've either hit or they haven't played a single snap. So it's absolutely worth the price of admission.
Absolutely. True free roll, territory there if you could have got it. But hey, it's obviously was pulled off the board fairly quickly. But something to watch there for San Diego State. They're playing Utah State, which has a relatively passive defense. And I mean, gosh, when you talk about Utah State too, second order wins, that's a 6-6 team, basically. It got lucky against Colorado State. Had two other games where they had a sub 25% post-game win expectancy. I really like San Diego State in that game, even at the 6.5. I mean, it's not that much. If this isn't a conference championship game, I think it's probably double digits if it's just in the regular season. Anyways, last bit of news bites. Taysir Mack, Pittsburgh, listed as questionable. He's kind of been pretty banged up over the past few weeks, and that's been pretty status quo for him. Unfortunately, Jared Wayne's been doing pretty well, and I think on PrizePicks he's about 46.5 yards, or somewhere in that ballpark is what I remember seeing him at. That's not a bad look, in terms of if you're looking at the over in a game that I predict will be. There's going to be some points scored. Oh, yeah. Wake Forest Pitt. Let's get that ready to go. Also in the Wake Forest Pitt game, Christian Beal-Smith, Wake Forest questionable. We saw him leave. He left 3 weeks ago, left again last week. Has had real trouble staying on the field. Justice Ellison's been banged up too. That's a backfield that's really having some issues in terms of their health. You can see some Christian Turner in there, obviously. And then lastly, Keaontay Ingram, USC questionable, missed last week. We saw a combination of Darwin Barlow and Vav Malapai, I think he's probably played like 50 games in a USC uniform at this point. He's been around for 5-6 seasons. He's been just a total mainstay. But, there's not really a lot of sizzle in that backfield against a Justin Wilcox-led defense, especially when it comes to the rushing defense. And USC wants to throw, but they did. I mean, if you saw last week, I was watching it, for Jackson Dart purposes. Final drive of the game against BYU, they're down 4 points, and they ran it, 6 times. I think they only completed, 2 passes or maybe 1 pass in that entire last drive, and they ran it 6 times. They only had 3.5 minutes left, and they ran out of time. It was like, great. I understand you want to pick up those first downs, but they just kept shooting themselves in the foot, but with improper clock management, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, just quick hitters on these. Taysir Mack probably not going to play, but it's important for us to figure out if he's going to play or not, because that kind of determines how we attack Jared Wayne and some of the other pieces. If he's in, Jared Wayne's probably not under consideration for me. He really, even with Taysir Mack out, he hasn't been ultra productive because it's really been the Jordan Addison show. But
absolutely, I mean, and Crawl's at his time, a little bit of the tight end work, sure.
Yep, Gavin Bartholomew too. So it's been Addison and the tight ends for the most part. If you add Taysir Mack back into the lineup again, that kind of lessens my interest in Jared Wayne. So got to keep tabs. Tomorrow morning. Wake Forest running backs, you're not going to play them. They're going to rotate regardless of who's back there. Pitt's strength on defense is their run defense. I mentioned it just because Quentin Cooley, one of the backups, is 3,300, I believe, on DraftKings. He got 14 carries last week. Maybe an option, but that's like last-ditch effort to fill in your lineups. Keaontay Ingram, last I saw, he's going to play. Probably rush, get 15 carries, and Vav Malapai will vulture him for a touchdown because that's just been his career.
It's the truth. Yeah, that's just how it's been from Malapai. But that's in terms of the Cal game. Obviously, we'll get into that a little more. We'll get over the sides and the over-unders for me. Kent State and Northern Illinois, as previously discussed. Last time these two teams played, it was a momentous shootout. 99 points scored, 1,355 total yards. A nuclear performance over there in terms of what we saw for an offensive output. And even though, as you mentioned, Kent State was basically Sean Lewis, their head coach, simply had to do something. I mean, I've watched enough of the Maction games because I've been covering them on Wednesdays for NBC. That Kent State defense has been appallingly bad. I mean, just time after time, you just think, all right, well, maybe they'll get a stop here. Oh no, they don't. For some of the metrics we're talking about here, they allow 6.3 yards per play. That's 108th in the country. 3.1 yards per points per drive, 119th. They rank 106 in terms of suppressing explosiveness on defense. All brutal. And let's face it, NIU isn't much better. In fact, you could argue that they're worse. They're 125th in overall defensive performance. terms of advanced analytics, 123rd in suppressing explosiveness, 125th in success rate. All of those metrics you just look at and you realize these are two of the worst defenses in the entire country. The very elite of pathetic defenses. The over-under is at 74.5 is the big line, yes. As mentioned, 99 points last time. I simply cannot imagine. I think both teams are going to be in the 40s. At the very least, you get one in the high 40s and one in the mid-30s. Both teams are going to score 30 points. Absolutely, it's a lead pipe lock. And with a lot on the line here in the championship game, it's not going to be like a regular season game where they're going to lay off. They're going to push the pedal to the metal. I'm going all in on Kent State, NIU over 74.5. And my other play, as you alluded to, Michael, Oklahoma State minus 5.5 over Baylor. Blake Shapen was fine last game. Don't get me wrong, but man, Oklahoma State's humming. It's just a case of their offense not making mistakes, because you expect a couple of mistakes out of Spencer Sanders every game. He's just going to do it. It's just who Spencer Sanders is. But even despite that, Oklahoma State's 9-0-1 over their last 10 games against the spread. Okay, and that one was obviously Oklahoma. This has been a dominant performance on their part. Last time they played, they really handled Baylor pretty easily. Baylor got a couple of big plays, but they only scored 14 points. Oklahoma State beat them 24-14. And then since then, Oklahoma State's offense has really kind of gotten a lot better since then. All right. So since Baylor, they put up 32 on Texas, 24 again on Iowa State, which they lost, but then whooped up on a decent, it's getting better sort of a Kansas team, 24-3 against West Virginia, 63 points against TCU, shutout Texas Tech, 37 against Oklahoma. I don't think they're going to have a problem scoring. If they can just protect the ball a little bit better, Spencer Sanders style, I don't think this game is particularly close, and I'm willing to lay the 5.5 points. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you hit on it, that Spencer Sanders turnovers probably determines that outcome there, especially if Gerry Bohanon, too, is out. I do like Oklahoma State, trust their defense. They got a lot on the line there, so I like the Cowboys. My side, a little bit of a contrarian play. I'm going UTSA. I think the Roadrunners pull this off tonight. I think there's a lot of recency bias in this line right now. Western Kentucky was up 14, or no, let's see. Western Kentucky was down 14-6 last week at Marshall, right?
Yep.
Then Grant Wells gets injured, and they blow the doors off Marshall in the second half, scored 40-plus points. And then people are also looking to the UTSA side where, they put up a clunker, obviously, against North Texas. But you got to remember that they had nothing to play for in that matchup. It was rainy. They got down early. I think Frank Harris got banged up that game. I think they just kind of closed the doors on that. And we're like, hey, it's not our day against North Texas, who obviously had a lot to play for, trying to get bowl eligible in that game. So I do think there's a lot of recency bias here with this line that is just flipped in the last few days, gone from a pick 'em, I think, to start now to obviously a 3.5-point dog to Western Kentucky. So I know people love the Bailey Zappi show and everything like that, but give me UTSA playing in front of 40,000 fans, potentially, in the Alamo Dome today.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the DFS situation, I will let you go through the core two plays for Friday, since it's a 2-game slate for tonight. So not really much. I agree with both of these plays and let you go with it.
Yeah, Frank Harris is just too cheap at 6,400. There is a bit of a discrepancy between our projection this week for Frank Harris with some of the other sites that I've seen. We have him projected at 35 fantasy points this week, which would be just, again, at 6,400 is just too cheap for a quarterback that can throw, run.
Fourth. I mean, he's the cheapest guy on the slate, right?
Yeah, through 6 touchdowns against
Ridiculous.
Western Kentucky last time these two teams met. The only thing really we have to worry about for Harris is, as I alluded to, he got banged up in that North Texas game last week. So Jeff Traylor, head coach, said he'd be fine. So we kind of trust the head coach here. 6,400, again, just too cheap for a quarterback that has played extremely well this year and can both throw and run with his legs.
I'm good. On to the bargain bin for Friday. Sticking with the Western Kentucky, obviously the most prolific offense in the entire country this year behind Zach Kitley, offensive coordinator, and Bailey Zappi. Daewood Davis is a guy I've got quite a few shares of, especially in some of the deeper leagues. And I don't know what more you really want from this guy, considering he's only been in single digits twice all season. In terms of the last few games, 25.5, 13, 10, 18.5, 13, 7.8, 15.4, 12.5 in terms of points. He's out there. He's getting a pretty good amount of snaps. He isn't quite to the prolific nature of Tinsley or Jarrett Stearns. He's who I consider to be probably the third wide receiver there, and that's a guy who eats, and 3 catches, 105 yards last game. At $4,400, he's incredible value in a shortened slate. I'm obviously backing him. And then next for UTSA, Joshua Cephus. We've seen him certainly be the secondary option to Zachary Franklin. And he's had quite a few games of, several catches. You look at his overall game log, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think he's had 8 games where he's had at least 6 catches. He had only 2 catches last game against Northern Texas, but they kind of really took the pedal off the metal where they had already had the division clinched. So they really kind of backed off a little bit. I think that's a pretty darn good shot. I also like him in what should be an absolute shootout. Last time these two teams played, caught 8 balls, 83 yards, and a touchdown. He even had a carry for 5 yards as well. So I'm all in. Give me some Joshua Cephus under $5,000. Both of those plays I feel are pretty good on the bargain side. Mike, your bargains.
Do you want to take a quick pause and discuss what we are discussing on the chat here as DraftKings just dropped their prop bets?
It depends. Have you already gotten our wagers in?
Yes, I have.
Okay, then I'm okay with talking about it because I don't want this to get pounded too much. Yeah. Emergency DraftKings situation going on right now. All right. A couple of them to stick out. Alex Padilla for Iowa. Passing yards is at 177.5. Okay.
Not even starting.
He's not starting. Okay. It's like we just projected this when it came to the quarterbacks whether they're starting or not. He's not starting. This is Spencer Petras. Ferentz has already laid it out and said he is getting the start. Now, we could see Padilla come in. In fact, I think we probably will see Padilla come in, honestly, and I have him in prize picks. We'll get to it, but I'm recommending the under on Petras for that very reason. But even with Padilla, when he has been healthy, it's not like he's been very good at all. I mean, he got pulled after going 6 for 14 last game against Nebraska for 76 yards. He gave up 2 sacks. The previous game, he went 6 of 17 against Illinois for 83 yards. Okay. And then the previous game, 11 for 24 against Minnesota, and then Northwestern, 172 yards. Alex Padilla, at 177 is flagrant. You have to get out there and get this on DKings. Oh, it just went off the board.
No way.
It just went off the board. Literally, I'm watching it right now.
They're watching us now, apparently.
Good. I hope one of our whales went out there and hammered it. I hope one of you guys got it. My gosh, that's crazy. That being said, I did notice a rushing line I thought was pretty interesting.
Okay.
If hopefully he's still out there. Where are we? Cameron Peoples, 66.5. Okay, if you looked over the past few games, all right, for Peoples, they've gone with, since Daytrick Harrington has come back, it's been a full committee approach. And I know that he's priced at $4K on DraftKings, and I don't have any problem with that. But last 2 games, Georgia Southern, 7 carries, 25 yards. Troy, 10 carries, 40 yards. I think 66.5. Given, Peoples is a good back, but we've seen Noel,
Harrington,
get plenty of Harrington. We've seen both of those guys get plenty of touches. It looks like they're back to the beginning of last season with a 3-way backfield, and they're playing a Louisiana team that absolutely stomped on Appalachian State last time they played. They destroyed them. So I think that's a pretty good look at 66.5 on the under.
But he is still up, just FYI, on my end.
He's still up. So there it is. That's one of the other ones we saw, obviously. And I got another one. We'll see. I'll say that for the column. Anyways, we'll get back on track here a little bit. Those are the 2 that really jumped out.
We had to take a pause there.
Yeah, this is the first time we've actually had lines drop in real time. So that's pretty exciting. I'm sure my boy Corey Cavender is out there. Shout out to Corey Cavender. Is probably out there laying some cash on it right now as well. So let's move back on to we're talking about Michael, which was the bargain bin. You're on the bargain bin.
Yeah, to Corian Clark for UTSA. I think we kind of mentioned it that all the UTSA players this week are just underpriced. Corian Clark is one of those. He's the third option behind Zachary Franklin and Joshua Cephus. But last time he played Western Kentucky, 7 receptions on 7 targets for 160 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not sure if you do this, but I like to. There's a new feature on Pro Football Focus where they kind of show the matchups, lining up across from each other, and the lowest ranked cornerback for Western Kentucky in terms of coverage grades will be lined up across from Corian Clark. So, I mean, if that was how it was the first time they met, he's got another favorable matchup here. Again, already succeeded against Western Kentucky previously, so he's really cheap at 4,200 there. Second play, Dalton Kincaid for Utah. People are going to gravitate towards Brant Kuithe, and rightfully so. I think this is a nice contrarian play in larger GPPs. It's not really a starter backup situation for Utah. It's more of a 1A, 1B with Kincaid and Kuithe. And Oregon is allowing the second most fantasy points to tight ends on this weekend slate. So there's some options, but in that 4K to 4,500 range, I like Kincaid.
Absolutely, completely agree, and no problem with that. And Utah is seeing a real propensity to use the tight end, of course. Moving on to Saturday, core 2 plays. As discussed, Rocky Lombardi, he's at $7,500, which, I mean, I want every piece of this game I can get. All of it. All the smoke, give it to me. As much as you can get. And in terms of the pricing, too, $7,500 is a real steal in this 8-game slate for a quarterback. I mean, you're seeing the pricing for the other big boys way, way more. Kenny Pickett, $9,700. Hartman, $9,500. Ritter, $9,000. Bryce Young, $8,500 against Georgia. You know what I mean? Dustin Crum's at $8,300. Love that play, too. I just think at $7,500, he is a smoking deal that you pretty much have to take advantage of. And then, obviously, Trayvon Rudolph, $6,900. Again, sub 7,000 for Trayvon Rudolph. He went for 300 yards the last time. He set an NIU record the last time they played. Had 3 touchdowns. I believe he's the 9th priced wide receiver on this slate, under $7,000. Okay, come on now. Come on. You got Tay Martin is $7,300. Okay, you got Trayvon Rudolph, $6,900. All day. Give me those 2 plays. Mike, yours.
Yeah, Jaquaril Roberson, I think, is probably my favorite play of the entire Saturday slate. I'm going to read this off to you, and you trying to look for an edge when constructing your lineups. You can debate whether it's been Roberson or A.T. Perry as the wide receiver 1 for Wake Forest. But you just look back at the receivers that have had success against Pittsburgh this year. Keaontay Thompson, 37 fantasy points. Corey Crooms, 30 fantasy points. Courtney Jackson, 29 fantasy points. Even Josh Downs had 17 fantasy points against Pittsburgh. What's the similarity between those 4 players I mentioned?
A lot.
Correct. So of the 2 plays, I mean, you're obviously going to gravitate towards Roberson because of pricing. Targets are fairly similar between the 2 players. But yeah, Roberson, because of that, is my favorite player on this Saturday slate. And then Dustin Crum, obviously, with that total for the Kent State Northern Illinois game. I think the only downside to Crum this week is because of his pricing and that total for the Mack championship matchup. He is going to be the highest owned player on DraftKings, right? Yeah, everybody's going to have him because 8,300, you cannot beat that for a guy that's going to probably get you 30 fantasy points, which is what we have him projected at this week. He's in all my lineups. I can't get away from having Dustin Crum because of that pricing.
No argument here on either of those fronts. Going to my bargain bin. You took one of my favorites. So I'll also go with Josh Whyle, tight end, Cincinnati, only at $3,300. I mean, we're looking for the boom here, of course. And in 3 of the last 5 games, Josh Whyle scored at least 17 points and gone over 22 points in 2 of the past 3. So he's obviously a red zone hog when it comes to targets. They scheme plays directly for him, try to get him those releases around the goal line, get him on a mismatch against linebackers, use his size, and he does a great job of it. So I'm all about that. $3,300, great salary modifier. And then, as mentioned, one of the guys, Nate Noel for Appalachian State. It is Christmas season. Noel, if we're going to do it, we might as well stay with the theme. $4,700. As we talked about, I think one of those Appalachian State running backs is going to hit. And he's actually been quite often used lately. It's a case where he had 100 yards, I want to say, the last game. And if you're going to roll the dice, on Appalachian State, I know they got rolled by Louisiana last time, but Billy Napier has been hired by Florida. It's all about motivation sort of in these sort of things. Obviously, they want to win the Sun Belt, but if I got to go with one, I'm going with Noel. Michael.
I'm not ignoring you. I'm not ignoring you. Alex Padilla is still on. You have to hit this. So I'm just keeping tabs on that.
He's still on? He's still on there?
He's still on there.
Wow. He went off for a second. Oh, my gosh, guys. You got to get Alex Padilla. Oh, my gosh.
My 2 bargain bin plays. I like Jayshawn Polk. He was a top 40, top 50 receiver for us in college fantasy coming into the year.
Absolutely.
He got banged up at the start of the season. He started to turn it around a little bit. 20 of his 37 targets this year have come in the last 4 games alone. In the previous matchup against NIU, had his season high of 84 yards. So again, I keep referencing it, but this game total is going to fly over that 74.5 or whatever it's at right now. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Jayshawn Polk is on the receiving end of 1 touchdown there. And then Cameron Peoples for Appalachian State. You kind of alluded to the concerns there for App State with them kind of integrating Daytrick Harrington back into the fold. Anderson Castle is getting carries. So it's really a 4-man backfield at this point. But then you look at the App State schedule. They've been blowing teams out, right? So it makes sense that they're using 3 and 4 running backs pretty consistently. So it's just a situation where you got Cam Peoples, 13 rushing touchdowns this season at 4,000. Even if you have your concerns about shared carries, it's too cheap. It's too cheap. And when you're doing your builds this week for your DFS lineups, we love the receivers, right? We've spoken on it with Rudolph, with Roberson. We're spending up at receiver. So we're going to look for some deals at running back. Cam Peoples, steal at 4,000.
Great deal. Moving on to BetSperts, our final one of the season. Promo code BetSperts for prize picks. If you put in BetSperts, you get a $100 match for your first $100. I know I've been using it quite often, my bonus money, as every bit I can. As soon as these come out, I've been using my bonus $100. I've been able to turn it into a pretty nice little profit. So definitely something you want to do if you're using prize picks. Please, you put in BetSperts and get paid for it. My first, Dustin Crum, as discussed. Kent State, over 27 fantasy points. I'm a go. I mean, we pretty much covered this ad nauseum. I think I have to get it in much more. Mike's got him at 30. I think that's a freaking lock. He's had rushing touchdowns in each of his last 8 games, and that's sweet nectar to prize picks where you get those 6-point rushing touchdowns. All over it. Next, as discussed, the other side of Iowa, Spencer Petras, under 156.5 passing yards. Iowa's offense is absolutely pathetic. It's pathetic, okay? They have to rely on their defense to score every week. That's just how it is. It's not. I'm just reporting the news here. They cannot move the ball effectively. He's going to have a short leash. He's going to start, but he's going to have a short leash. I think both quarterbacks play here. And if both quarterbacks are playing, you go with the under. Mike, your prize picks.
Chris Hudson, over 9 fantasy points. This one just stuck out right away. We've mentioned him, I think, last week for DFS purposes. Yep. Jalen Red, Johnny Johnson, both not playing at this point. I don't know if they're out for the season, but they're really turning over that wide receiver room to Devon Williams and, the freshman. So I think he's got, 18 targets over the last 2 games alone, had a season-high 96 receiving yards against Utah the previous time out. So I like him to hit the over on 9 fantasy points. This one came in late yesterday, but Chase Garbers, I like him over 20 fantasy points. We have him projected at 24 fantasy points this week, facing USC defense that's pathetic
defense.
Last in the conference in scoring. Chase Garbers has hit, 20 points in 7 of the last 9 games, right? And he had a tough matchup, didn't hit it last week against UCLA. I think he'll hit it this week in a game that really doesn't matter to either team. So might as well go out with a bang, right?
Sounds good. And we will go out with a bang. That wraps it up for the Letter Winners podcast for Championship Week. Thank you. I'm Eric Froton at CF Froton, NBC Sports Edge. I will have my props column coming out shortly after this ends. Mike Bainbridge with the CFF site. Check out the Discord tomorrow for all the up-to-date injury news. And have a great championship week.
Go Blue. Alex Padilla unders.